So guys, since we are approaching the end of our program for the first year of our foundation math program, I thought of making a series of videos to quickly go through the concepts that we have done over the year, and this would be like a place to go to just watch the topics in in a very short format, where I will just be doing the bits that are necessary for us to just revise the portion that we have gone through. So one of the most important topics I think this year that was introduced to you has been algebra. Before this, you have been learning about numbers and doing all sorts of things with those numbers, but you uh, hadn't imagined math to be about letters, right? And essentially, these letters are not really letters, but as we will see, um, there's something that is unknown. So, for example, if I say fill in the blanks, fill in the blanks, let's say blanks. So, let's say I have 2 times something gives me 8. Now, what should I fill in the blank to make this equation come true? Now, that blank is what gets replaced by an alphabet or an unknown. This is our unknown, right? So instead of writing this as a blank, what we do is we write this as 2x equals 8. What it means is it is 2 times x equals 8. And as we all know, this is such a simple example that we know what 2 times what is x, right? So in this small exercise, what we are going to do is we're going to learn how to find these variables when they are unknown, right? Like the unknown variables. But we're going to learn the techniques of doing that. So before we move on to that part, I want to introduce you to equations are nothing but nothing but balances, but a balance. You know for a fact that a balance looks like this. This is the most traditional balance that you can have, and you have this lever in between, so it this the length of this is equal to, let's say if this is 10 centimeters, this will also be 10 centimeters. So what it allows us to do is measure weights using a reference. So what typically a shopkeeper would do is put, let's say, 1 kg weight here, and then he will weigh your apples here, right? And if the weight of apples, like once this balance comes to a uh, to a to an equal level, he'll say that okay, these apples are 1 kg, and you believe that shopkeeper. So what we're going to use here is equations as a balance. That is, if a shopkeeper has to add, let's say, 200 grams here, so we we know intuitively that if he adds 200 grams here, he has to add apples worth 200 grams here as well. Or if he subtract, let's say, 100 grams from here, we have to subtract 100 grams from the right hand side as well. If he multiplies this 1 kg and makes it, let's say, 4 kgs by multiplying by 4, we know for a fact that the amount of apples, or rather the weight of the apple, has to be multiplied by 4 as well to make it equal. Or in case he wants to divide it and make it 500 grams, you have to divide by 2. You divide by 2 on both sides. So essentially what you're doing is whatever you're doing on the LHS, that is the left hand side, you're doing the same thing on the RHS, that is the right hand side. So let us try to understand how to solve a solve an equation, and in the first case we will be taking linear equation. Solve an equation, and let's take a simple linear equation. Let's say we have 2x equals 18. Now intuitively we know that it is 2 times 9 is 18, but this is the most simplest of the equation. So instead what we will do is we will try to employ those four operations that we have learnt as kids and try to do the same operations on both sides in order to get the value of x. So if I have to get the value of x, our end goal has to be x equals something, right? So if I want x on this side, the only thing that I can do here is divide this by 2. And if I divide it by 2 on the left hand side, I have to do the same thing on the right hand side as well. And what starts happening is, you know that 2 ones are 2, 2 ones are 2, here you have 2 ones are 2, 2 nines are 18, and what you get is x equals 9. So this is an answer that we already knew, right? So this is the first example. Now let us say we have another example of x plus 3 equals 15. Now we all know that 12 plus 3 is 15, but end goal has to be x equals this, and we need to like kind of employ our addition, subtraction, multiplication, division in order to get to that point. So here what I shall do is I shall subtract 3 on both sides. Whatever I do on the right hand side, I do the same thing on the left hand side, and what I end up getting is this gets cancelled, and what I have is x equals 12, right? So this is pretty simple. Now let's move on to the third part. Let's say I have x minus 5 gives me negative 2. Now here you would be like, oh, what minus 5 gives me negative 2? Intuitively it becomes slightly difficult for you to get it. Although if you use a number line, you will know. What if I subtract from my 5, like 5 from gets me to minus 2. So you will go on a number line and do it. But instead we have a more powerful technique here where we try to get to x equals something by doing something with the left hand side as well as the right hand side. And if we try to do that, here I have negative, so I have to add 5 on both sides, and what ends up happening is on this side I have this getting cancelled, and x equals plus 5 minus 2 is you know that we have to subtract, we get 3 and give the sign of the larger number, that is 5, so it's plus 3, and we plug it back into the equation. Let's say 3 minus 5, you get minus 2. Let's take one more example of a simpler case, then go move on to a little more complex example. So let's say I have x divided by 3 gives me 7. Now what divided by 3 gives me 7? Intuitively you might get this because these are very small numbers. You will most probably get it, but let's employ the method. In this case I need to get rid of this 3 which is in the denominator. So what I try doing is multiply by 3 on both sides, and these get cancelled. 3 ones are 3 ones are, and what I have is x equals 7 times 3, which is 21. Now let us take a slightly difficult example and see how we can solve it. Let's take an example which is, let's say, a slightly complex type 2 questions. Let's say, and if I have, let's say, 2x plus 7 giving me 15, right? So in this case, as you can see that there is the unknown is multiplied by 2. Now the question would be like, oh, what do I do here now? Like, do I subtract 7 first, or do I divide the left hand side by 2? Now it is easier, or it is rather, you know for a fact that in BODMAS we have, BODMAS follows the technique of, you do the division first, then division and multiplication together, and addition and subtraction together, right? uh, so in this case, since we are reverse engineering the whole thing, what we shall go for is addition or subtraction, because we are getting from a bigger equation to a smaller equation. So we are essentially following the ulta path. Now if you're following the ulta path, you need to do addition and subtraction first. So I need to get rid of plus 7 first. This is my first thing to get rid of. If I'm getting rid of plus 7, I'll have to do minus 7 on both sides, which gives me an equation which is more palatable. 2x equals 15 minus 7 is 8, and this is a easier equation to do now. And as we all know, I need to get rid of 2, so I divide by 2 on both sides, and what I get is 2 ones are 2 and 2 ones are 2, 2 fours are 8, and I get finally x equals 4. And to check this, we can just plug it into a LHS, which is 2 times 4 plus, which is x is 4 plus 7, it gives us 8 plus 7 equals 15. And you can see here that here, while doing the board, we follow the bond mass while getting the equation, but since we are doing the opposite while solving an equation, we need to do the addition and subtraction first. Let's do another one. Let's say I have here x by 3 plus 7 equals 2. Okay, now here what do I do in the second example of this? um, I have to subtract 7 from both sides, right? That's the first thing I will do, because again we are following the reverse path. So what you get is, here you get x upon 3 equals 2 minus 7, which is minus 5, and then you do into 3 on both sides, and what you end up getting is 3 ones are 3, and you end up getting x equals minus 15. So these are the steps. If you follow like to the core, you should be able to do the simpler linear equations. For the complex one, I shall make one more video. Stay tuned for it. Yeah, and thank you very much.